Heat lifted in pale veils off the flats. A wagon sat canted at the basin's lip, its canvas ripped, its wheels sunk to the hub. 3 men came out of the glare in a broken line. Caleb Blackthorne first, shoulders square, Jesse Pike behind him, left sleeve dark with blood, Luke Carver last, younger, watchful. Vultures rose, circled once, and drifted down the ridge again. This was the Colorado Desert, Arizona Territory, in the year 1885. A country where water could vanish overnight, and where a man's measure was often taken by how long he could endure. They reached the wagon and stood listening. Wind rattled the loose boards, somewhere a length of canvas snapped. Caleb laid a palm to the wheel, then lifted the flap. Inside, a woman lay on a folded quilt, fever bright, a newborn wrapped against her chest. Her eyes tracked the shadow of Caleb's hat across the canvas, as if it were the last cloud in a dry sky. Luke climbed in and set his hat aside. The child stirred at the shade and gave a thin cry. Jesse steadied himself on the bough, jaw tight as the woman tried to rise. "Don't," Luke said quietly. She breathed, "Water," and Caleb wet a strip of cloth and touched it to her lips while dust hissed along the boards. Small things told the story. A pocket Bible opened to Psalms, 2 glass feeding bottles rolled to a corner, a spoon soot black from a fire gone cold, a dynamite crate turned into a cradle. Below the wagon, the basin lay white and empty, the ground scarred where dynamite had torn it open. Someone had tried to blast for water and failed. Caleb studied the broken earth, then looked back at the woman. "Your husband tried to clear it?" he asked, voice even. She blinked once, her lips trembling. "He never came back," she whispered. "Please, the baby." Luke found a folded sheet of instructions pinned beneath a tin plate. Boil the milk. Cool it. Feed small and often. He read the words aloud because reading steadied his hands. Jesse built a quick flame out of scraps, guarding it with his body from the wind. Caleb measured water, precise and calm. "Small and often," Luke repeated, easing the nipple to the child's mouth until the crying dwindled to breath. When the baby fed, the woman's face loosened. She watched them as if watching a dream that might hold. "His name, Thomas," she said, gathering what strength remained. Luke nodded once, taking the word like an order. "Thomas," he said. She lifted her eyes toward each man in turn. "Promise," Caleb answered without flourish. "We'll see him safe." Silence gathered in the wagon. The wind fell off for a heartbeat, and the desert, which forgives little, seemed to listen. Jesse stood with his hat in his bleeding hand. Luke drew the blue cloth closer around the child, feeling the small heat of him. The woman let out one long breath and did not draw another. They did what the country required. Caleb cut a narrow trench on the slope where the ground gave least resistance. Jesse, pale and swaying, carried stones to keep the mound against the wind. Luke wrapped the body in the cleanest cloth and set the Bible beneath her hand. When the last stone settled, Caleb said, "May the Lord keep her," and the wind took the words along the ridge. Evening leaned in, brass light over black rock. The child woke and reached at nothing with open hands. Jesse steadied himself against the wagon and looked away, then back, something softer breaking through the pain. Caleb found a simple locket on a ribbon among the bedding and pressed it into Luke's palm. "Hold it for him," he said, "until there's someone to hold it better." They made a small camp beside the ruined hole. Smoke lifted thin and straight. Luke fed Thomas again in the half-light and kept his voice low. "You're all right," he said to the child, and the words reached the other men too. On the ridge, a coyote passed and did not call. In a land like this, men don't pray with words. They pray with what they're willing to carry. The fire was little more than a ring of coals, its glow cutting lines into tired faces. The baby slept in Luke Carver's arms, a small knot of warmth wrapped in blue cloth. Beyond the circle of light, coyotes traced the ridge in silence. Luke stared into the fire until the flames blurred. Memory rose, hot as gun smoke. He saw the white front of the Wickenburg Bank, the street outside shimmering in midday heat, and the three of them riding in bold. The clerk's startled shout, a pistol cracking from the doorway. A townsman drawing down fast as lightning, cutting one of their own from the saddle. Jesse shifted where he sat, sweat beading pale on his brow. "I can still hear 'em," he muttered. Boots hitting the boardwalk, rifles coming up. His bandaged arm twitched as if the bullets still sang through it. Caleb leaned forward, steady, calm even with dust caked in the seams of his face. He said, "One of us didn't make it. That's the truth of it." The words carried no anger, only the weight of final accounting. The flames cracked, sending sparks upward. Luke tightened his hold on the child, voice low. "We dropped what we couldn't carry." His eyes fell to the infant, steady in sleep. "All we've got left is him." Jesse let out a bitter laugh that caught in his throat. Hell of a trade. Gold for a squalling mouth. Yet he leaned a little closer, as if the fire's glow or the child's breath drew him despite himself. Caleb set a coal straight with a stick, his voice quiet but unyielding. "Running from the law don't change what's ahead. Desert's got a way of showing a man who he is. We'll see what it makes of us." The coyotes called then, thin and sharp against the night. Luke looked down at the boy, small fingers curled into his shirt, and whispered, "He'll live." Out here, the pass rode close behind a man, but the desert didn't care what you'd done. It only cared what you could carry forward. The fire sank lower, its glow no wider than the space of 3 men and a child. Night pressed close around them, stars cold and sharp above the ridge. The baby stirred and whimpered, and Luke rocked him gently until the sound faded back into small breaths. Jesse Pike watched, his face tight with pain. "Funny," he muttered, voice rough. "We could blast open a safe without thinking, but we can't even feed him without spilling half the bottle." His mouth twisted in a bitter grin, but his eyes stayed on the child longer than his words allowed. Caleb Blackthorne sat with a Bible open on his knees. He did not read aloud. He only ran a hand across the cracked cover, steady as stone. When he spoke, his voice was measured, quiet. "We're hunted men. Every town between here and the Rios got reason to hang us. But this child don't know that. All he knows is who holds him." Luke glanced up from the bundle in his arms. His face was young yet drawn, eyes hollow with fatigue. "His mother asked for a promise," he said. "We can't give her back, but we can give him a chance." Jesse shifted, jaw tight, but after a moment he nodded once. "What we done, there's no pardon for it, but maybe seeing him through counts for something." Caleb closed the Bible and laid it in the sand between them. He spoke plain. "Then we swear it. Whatever breath we've got left, it's his. From this night forward, we're godfathers to Thomas." The baby squirmed, small fists pushing against the cloth, as if sealing the vow in silence. Luke bent his head, cheek against the child's crown. Jesse looked away, then back, eyes damp but unashamed. Caleb reached out and set a hand on the blanket, firm and final. The coyotes on the ridge went quiet, and for a moment the desert itself seemed to hold its breath. Men make oaths in churches, under roofs and crosses, but out here, in a land that strips a man bare, a promise spoken by firelight weighs heavier than iron. Morning broke white and merciless. The 3 men set out in silence, their shadows long across the cracked ground. Luke carried the child close to his chest, whispering soft words that vanished into the dry air. Thomas whimpered once, then settled, his small breath warm against Luke's shirt. By midday, the heat hammered down. The basin ahead shimmered like spilled silver, though every man knew it was only mirage. They stopped beneath a shallow ledge where Jesse slumped heavily against the rock, his wounded arm seeping dark through the bandage. He gave a sharp laugh that turned into a cough. "Robbers turned nursemaids," he muttered. Yet when Luke placed the baby in his good arm, Jesse's voice broke softer. "Ain't your fault, little one." He rocked the child with surprising care until Caleb called them back to the trail. That night, the wind rose sharp with grit, carrying the smell of stone. Stars blinked like brittle glass, thin and far. Caleb crouched by the small fire, his voice calm. "A man doesn't pray with words out here," he said. "He prays with what he's willing to carry." Jesse looked away, but Luke caught the weight of it and held Thomas a little tighter. Days blurred into one another. Boots grinding salt, water rationed to drops, the child fed sparingly from the bottle. Once a dust devil twisted across their path, scattering grit into their eyes. Once the vultures lifted all at once and vanished into silence, leaving only stillness heavy as stone. Each turn of the trail pressed Jesse further behind. On the fourth morning, his strength gave out. He dropped to his knees, pale and trembling. Caleb and Luke bent to lift him, but Jesse waved them off, his face set. He pressed his lips to the boy's forehead. "Don't let him be like us," he whispered, words hoarse as wind through dry grass. Then he sagged back, his eyes fixed on the horizon he would not reach. At dawn, they laid him beneath a cairn of stones. The Bible page. Caleb read, lifting in the breeze before he folded it shut again. No other words were spoken. Luke stood with Thomas in his arms, and the vow hung heavier now. 2 men left to carry what 3 had promised. The desert takes what it will. But sometimes, before it closes its fist, it leaves behind a measure of grace. The land turned harsher with every mile. Black volcanic ridges split the horizon, their jagged edges catching the sun like blades. The heat came not just from above, but from the stone itself, burning through the soles of their boots. Luke carried Thomas swaddled close, and the child's faint breaths steadied his own. Caleb Blackthorn still led the way, though his stride had shortened. His broad frame swayed under the weight of exhaustion. When Thomas fussed, Caleb halted and tore strips from his coat, tying them to a broken wheel rim. He held the makeshift parasol high above the boy. "Every inch of shade matters," he said, voice quiet, final. That evening, the wind shifted. A wall of dust swept across the flats, howling low, drowning the world in a storm of grit. Caleb pulled Luke close, shielding him and the child with his own body. The sand scraped their faces raw, but the boy cried through it, alive. When the storm passed, Caleb slumped heavily against the rocks, his breathing shallow, shoulders bowed. Luke boiled the last measure of milk and fed Thomas drop by drop. When the boy slept, Caleb drew the locket from his pocket, the oval charm taken from the wagon, and pressed it into Luke's palm. "Keep it for him," he said. "When he's grown, let him know he was wanted." Luke tried to push it back, voice sharp with desperation. "You'll walk with us tomorrow." Caleb met his eyes, steady, calm as stone. "Tomorrow belongs to you, son. Mine's near done." He looked at the sleeping child, his face softening in a way Luke had never seen. "Make him honest. That's enough." The night deepened. The stars flared white above the ridge, endless and cold. Caleb exhaled once, like a man setting down a heavy load, and did not breathe again. At dawn, Luke laid him beneath a cairn of black stones. No sermon, only silence, and the desert wind stirring dust across the mound. Then he lifted Thomas, pressed the boy to his chest, and walked on alone. Out here, a man doesn't choose what he leaves behind. The desert decides. But how he meets it, that's his alone to give. Luke Carver walked alone now. The salt flats stretched white and endless, glowing under a sun that burned the skin raw. Each step cracked the crust beneath his boots, and every breath rasped through a throat scraped dry. Yet in his arms, Thomas slept, his small weight the only thing keeping Luke upright. The water was nearly gone. Luke boiled the last of it in a battered cup, thinned the milk until it was hardly more than clouded water, and fed it slowly to the child. He licked his own lips but drank nothing. "Yours first," he whispered. "Always yours first." That night the desert changed its face. The heat fell away, replaced by a chill sharp enough to bite. Luke laid the baby on his coat and curled around him, his own body a wall against the cold. Above, the stars flared white and near, so many they seemed ready to spill onto the earth. For a long time Luke watched them, whispering rough words no man heard but the boy. On the second day, vultures rose behind him and drifted like dark sails. Coyotes shadowed the trail, their eyes glinting faint in the dusk. Luke bent, scooped a stone, and hurled it. "Back off!" His voice cracked, but his arms never loosened around the child. The desert gave him no mercy. Light wavered in sheets, pools of water shimmering and vanishing before his eyes. Twice he fell to his knees, clutching Thomas so tightly the boy cried out. Each time Luke forced himself up, whispering against the sobs, "I've got you. I won't let go." Men will call strength the weight of muscle or the draw of a gun. Out here, the truest strength is the one that carries on when every step begs to quit. 3 days had passed since Caleb's burial at dawn. By the third night alone, Luke was little more than shadow. His steps faltered, his vision swam, yet the child breathed steady against his chest. And so he kept walking, staggering, mumbling, cradling a life that was not his own, but had become his reason for every step left. At dawn of the 4th morning alone, Luke was near collapse. The salt flats burned his eyes until the horizon rippled with false rivers. His knees buckled, his breath came ragged, yet he clutched Thomas close, rocking him when the boy whimpered. At the edge of a black lava ridge, Luke stumbled into shadow and froze. There, kneeling in the dust, stood a packed burro. Its flanks were hollow, ribs sharp against the hide, one pannier torn loose. Its ears drooped, but its eyes still flickered with a dull spark of life. For a long moment, Luke thought it another mirage. He whispered hoarsely, "Mercy." From his pack, he drew the last tin of food tomatoes, warm and sticky from the sun. He spilled it at the burro's muzzle. The animal licked, slow at first, then steadier, strength returning faintly. Luke let out a sound, half laugh, half sob, the desert swallowing it whole. He sank to his knees, tears cutting clean tracks through the dust on his face. Sometimes a man begs for a miracle and finds it standing before him in a ragged hide with iron shoes. With trembling hands, Luke tore into the saddlebag, ripping free its worn leather straps and flap. He lashed them across the burro's back, fashioning a rough sling where no saddle should have been. He set Thomas carefully inside, securing him close against the beast's ribs. The boy stirred but did not cry, soothed by the slow rhythm of the animal breathing beneath him. Luke walked beside the burro, its hollow flanks shifting with each labored breath. Every hoof sank deep into the salt like a seal pressed into wax. Man, child, and beast moved together toward the far horizon, 3 survivors bound by need. The desert had taken much, but now, for a time, it had given back. By evening of the 8th day, a red band stretched across the horizon as the sun dropped behind Old Woman Mountain. Luke's legs trembled with every step, his hand white-knuckled on the burro's rope. Beside him, the child swayed in the sling, his small breaths steady, unbroken. From the ridge above, Luke saw them at last, lanterns trembling in the basin below. New Jerusalem, a rough mining town clinging to the desert's edge. He heard it too, the faint drift of a fiddle, voices rising with rough laughter. For days he had heard nothing but wind and his own ragged breath. Now, there was life. He led the burro down the slope, stumbling more than walking, until the dirt street stretched before him. The first townsfolk stopped where they stood, voices faltering at the sight of him, a gaunt man hollowed by the desert, dust-caked, cradling a child swaddled in blue. Luke pushed through their silence and stepped into a clapboard schoolhouse where lamplight glowed warm across rough-hewn walls. He lifted the boy high enough for all to see, his voice cracked but clear. "His name is Thomas." The baby stirred, let out a soft cry, and fell quiet again. Hands reached out, gentle, certain, taking him from Luke's arms. Relief broke across Luke's face, a peace deeper than exhaustion. He staggered once, then fell to his knees, breath shallow. Someone bent to catch him, but his chest lifted only twice more before it stilled. Dust streaked his face, but the fear was gone from it. Some men steal gold, others spill blood, but a few, against all reason, redeem themselves in the giving of what little remains. Thomas slept in the arms of strangers, his small weight passed to a safer world. And Luke Carver, the last of 3 godfathers, lay still beneath the glow of lantern light. So the tale ended in New Jerusalem. 3 men had ridden out of Wickenburg as thieves, but the desert had stripped them down to something truer. Jesse Pike, bitter to his last breath, gave the child a prayer when no one expected it. Caleb Blackthorne, stern and steady, gave his strength to shade and shelter until the desert claimed him. And Luke Carver, youngest of the 3, carried the boy through heat and hunger, and with his final breath kept the promise made at a dying mother's side. The woman's plea had not been broken. Her son lived, the town raised him, and his name was Thomas. Folks remembered the 3 men not for the bank they robbed, nor for the gold they lost in the sand, but for the life they delivered through dust and fire. In a land that takes more than it gives, a man's worth is not measured by what he holds on to, but by what he sets down for others. And so the story traveled, carried by campfire and lamplight, passed in quiet tones across the West. 3 godfathers, men with nothing left to bargain but their own lives, found grace in the keeping of a child.